They taught me the world only makes sense if you force it to.
Needed to help bring the men who murdered his family to justice.
So he could turn out like you?
So that he wouldn't.
Hello everyone, thanks so much for joining me here today as we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, comic books. My name is Jose. I love comic books. I love talking about them. I love sharing them with you. Feel free to follow me on social media if you would like. Links are in the description below. I've also posted a link to the DC fan site that I have plot synopsis and character bios for this issue. We're going to be looking at a really fun one. It is actually a short story. It's about 11 pages out of the 100 here. Detective Comics 442. Now, this cover is by Jim Aparo. We're going to be looking at the main story, which is the story with Batman. And it's got two really cool things in this story that I want to share with you. Number one, it is written by the late, great Archie Goodwin. And number two, it is illustrated by the late, great Alex Toth. It is fantastic. Now, Jim Aparo in the 70s, I think, was the best Batman artist, you could say, of all time. Unfortunately, in the 80s, age and stuff, it just looked very dated, but his 70s work is absolutely spectacular. I don't think there's anybody better at doing Batman than Jim Aparo during the 70s, but we are here for Alex Toth. So we start here with a prologue. Earlier, a flash storm had shattered the spring evening in Gotham, but now a clear sky and a full moon help us focus on one of the city's new fashionable high-rises, in the penthouse of which we find aeronautical engineer Mason Terrell received a late and unexpected visitor. So I believe Toth also lettered this himself. So you see here the doorbell, and he goes, "Yes, coming." And he says, "Well, I'm impressed. When the doorman said who was coming up, I wasn't sure just what to expect," says Mason. And this lady here says, "Thank heaven I reached you, Mason. It's hard to know where to begin, but..." And he goes, "How about a nightcap? I was fixing myself one when you rang. There's ice in the bucket. Help yourself while I let a little of this view that I'm paying $6 a month for. Ah, that's better." And then he goes, "Oh my God, Ben Dancer, it can't be." And suddenly you see this airplane here shooting indiscriminately here, just shattering everything here. And so when you patrol the city, when you stalk those who would prey upon others, you are alert, prepared for the sounds of violence, gunfire. But gunfire from the Twin Vickers machine gun of a Spad 13 from a ghostly white bleached relic of a war ended over a half century ago. Can anyone be prepared for this night when death flies the haunted sky? Real quick here, you're going to see the Batman logo on the cape here. And I have several versions of this story. I have an Archie Goodwin trade paperback that I'm using. I have a Greatest Batman Stories ever told that this story is in there. And I think I have a facsimile edition of this issue. But I have another. I definitely have a few versions of this here. So, yet prepared or not for the relic specter suddenly before him, this man's training, his very act, is to act, for he is the Batman. So, really quick here, look at the all black on the boots, on the they're not really underwear. What do wrestler are they? They're not tights. Whatever wrestlers wear, that's what this is supposed to be. and then the gloves, and then, of course, the cape. It is beautiful. It reminds me a lot of the work that David Mazzucchelli did in Batman Year One. Regardless, here we see Batman jumping up, and here comes this airplane here, and written by Archie Goodwin with art by Alex Toth. And as I mentioned, even though it does not say in here, I believe he is the letterer as well. So, and look at the rope going through. Alex Toth was a fantastic artist. Man, oh man, I have his. There's these 3 books, and I bought them when they first came out. They're just absolutely beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Gosh, and at Deasing Heights, above the deserted streets. So you see Batman here on this vertical panel here, jumping toward this airplane. I like vertical panels. I find them creative. How they get the illustration there to tell their story here. So you see him grab. Then with bone-wrenching swiftness and force, the ghostly spad loops. And so, sorry, he was ready for me. I can't hang on. Sorry, I was reading it this way instead of the other way here. And so look at this, just straight. Oh, this is just beautiful here. What an illustrator he was. Rest in peace, my man. Beautiful work. Loop brought us back over the water tower. Got to bring my free fall under control and hit feet first now. And so he goes into this water tower, which softens his fall here. And he's correct. If you have to fall feet first. And so Batman comes through. Oh, just beautiful illustration here. And so up here, meanwhile, in Mason Terrell's penthouse apartment, you can see the people all just aghast by what they see here. And here they can see his body. And here's that lady here. And at top of the building. And Batman says, "That won't get you away from the police. Only a broken leg." And Batman says, "I saw you sneak out the roof door from the building across the way, running away as a poor idea. If you know anything about what's happened," and of course she goes, "Batman, by the time the police question me, two more men may die. Help me, please. I'll explain on the way," she says. And so here, later the two race northward in the car of Eve Dancer. And so it's funny here, Batman on a regular car here. "Was your father the Korean War ace who died in a crash a few years ago?" And she goes, "Yes, it was suicide. And now the 3 men who drove him to it are being killed unless we reach the Richtofen aerodrome in time," she says here. And so, "My father made headlines flying jets, Batman, but his real love was restoring and flying old World War I biplanes. After retiring, he gathered up a group of amateur pilots who shared his interests. Mason Terrell, Doug Garth, and Rick Hallstrom." And so here they are, beautifully illustrated by Toth here. Pooling their money, they gradually acquired and rebuilt the old planes they wanted. And Daddy taught them how to fly and maintain them until they had sort of a squadron flying every weekend for the sheer joy of it, or so Dad thought. So here we see all 4 airplanes. Then, and so Mason says to this guy here, "Hi, Ben. Doug's just inherited a farm north of Gotham. It's all pastured land and perfect for an airstrip for us to put on air shows." And Rick here says, "Which would give us a chance to make our old kites pay their own way as we fly them." And who's the blonde one? Doug. Okay. "It's a bit of a gamble, but if you know me, Ben, I like gambling." And so Mason, Doug, and I have discussed calling the place Red Baron Field or Richtofen Aerodome. Something corny with an appeal, Ben. Get old WW1 costume, exaggerated stuff, and do dogfights. Comic sends up of the old days. Crowds will eat it up. And Ben's like, a circus. Turn this old spad thing I've loved and sweat over into a cheap carnival joke. I won't do it ever. We're all equal partner, Ben. If it comes to a vote, you won't have any choice. Doug Garth was both right and wrong. When the long bitter lawsuit went against him, Daddy decided to make one last flight his last. So, alright. Beautifully illustrated. This is just, Alex Toth is absolutely one of my favorites. If you are in modern comic books and you see artists, not David Mazzucchelli. David Mazzucchelli, of course, is from Batman Year One and had a run on Daredevil, including Born Again. But Chris Samnee, I think Chris Samnee is a modern day Alex Toth. Absolutely beautiful work that Chris Samnee does. So he's currently doing Batman and Robin Year One with Mark Waid. He's worked with Waid before on Daredevil and Captain America. He's done a lot of stuff. Look up his work. It's just beautiful. It's got that heavy, thick brush, lots of blacks, lots of just beautiful here. All right. And so Eve continues here. At Daddy's funeral, my grief expressed itself in tears. But my younger brother, Benji, on emergency leave from the Air Force, it came out in rage. And so the brother says, Terrell, Garth, and Hallstrom drove Dad to this end, Eve, and I'm going to make them pay and pay for it. And so she continues here. Benji resigned his Air Force commission and vanished. Then months later, a call summoned me to a small, seldom used airfield. Benji, this SPAD, you've made it over to look exactly like, and he goes, the old man's. When I get these guns into working order, I'll settle with those Richtofen Aerodome clowns. And she says, I tried reasoning with Benji, but he made me leave then. Early this evening, when I returned to that field hangar. Empty, no. If only there's time enough to warn the others. Must keep the police out of this, for Benji's sake, she says. And she continues here, but there were problems. I couldn't reach Garth or Hallstrom due to tonight's storm knocking out phone lines up here. When I finally got to Terrell's, it was just then that Benji attacked. And Batman says, is that the turnoff up ahead, Eve? And she says, yes, there's Doug Garth Farm, but he's supposed to be working at the Aerodome, which should be beyond the next, and suddenly, fire, oh dear Lord. So you can see that something had exploded here. So, ahead, a lone security guard wages a losing battle, and Batman says, what happened? How did it start? And the guard says, just minutes ago, an old biplane flew down out of nowhere, strafed the airfield, and bombed the office, and Mr. Garth inside. He's been working on the account since before tonight's storm. Can you get him out? Says the guard here. And Batman tries. He says, he's locked the door. No time to batter it down. Any other way in? And he goes around a window around the back. As the Batman reaches the window, danger. And so Batman says, the roof's collapsed. Anyone inside is finished. And so then, as the wall crumbles, Batman, I'm all right. Eve says, Batman. And Batman says, I'm all right, Eve. I was too late to get inside. The fire will burn itself out now. But it's more urgent than ever now that we reach the Aerodome's third partner, Rick Hallstrom. And the guard says, the phone lines are still down. It's about a 20-minute drive to Mr. Hallstrom's place. And Eve says, there's a better and faster alternative. I don't know if you've ever handled a World War I biplane, Batman, but I wouldn't be Ben Dancer's daughter if I hadn't. So, says here, soon with Eve at the controls, the Hanover CL2 takes off into the night sky. In its observer seat, the Batman. And he says, I've had some experience in these antiquities. Detective Comics 404, that was illustrated by Neil Adams, and I do have a playlist. Feel free to check that out if you would like. But Eve has obviously had more. That and my being free to act could make the difference going up against that killer Spad. And so as the German two-seater nears its destination, Batman, that car, it's been a strafe. Benji must have caught Hallstrom coming home. We're too late again. And Batman says, no, listen ahead. Machine gun fire. And so, look at this. This is amazing. Using some dry brush there. Vickers' machine gun fires and a man running for his life. But before the blazing tracers can find their target, you see this airplane then bumps into the other ones. Good work, Eve. Our wheel glanced this wing. Jarred him enough so Hallstrom could reach cover. Now, she says here, now I'm pulling up alongside him. Once Benji sees me, he'll surely come to his senses. This madness mustn't go any further. And Batman says, wait, no, that's... the Batman's shout is carried away by the screaming slipstream as Eve deftly brings the Hanover wing to wing with the ghostly pad. A pistol. Benji, no, I'm your sister. You can see him aiming that gun. But as Vickers and Magnum weapons are not the only airborne weapons this night, another is the Batarang. And you can see that here as he hits him in the hand because, Batman is Batman. So beautiful. Look at this. Just, so glorious. And so Archie Goodwin continues to narrate this. Swiftly, a caped form moves across the wing of the Hanover. Then the Spad rolls. He's trying to shake me loose like before, but by letting go as the roll peaks, I fall toward the cockpit, and he gives him a big punch here. So now 2 pairs of hands battle for the stick. And Batman says, give it up, man. Can't you see? And the brother says, that you can outmatch me? Maybe another time, hero, but not. And you can see here, this is beautiful from inside the control pit. When I've got a safety belt and you don't. So Batman falls, but he lands on the other airplane here. No safety belt, but a guardian angel, yes. For Eve's pulled up her plane right under the Spad, and just in time. And an adventure that began with a water tower ends with another. And so you can see he crashes into that water tower, and she's like, Benji, oh God, Benji. And Batman says, I tried to warn him the tower was ahead, but he wouldn't listen. Eve, take comfort. That pilot wasn't your brother, Batman says. So after landing, the Hanover's nearby and joining a shaken Rick Hallstrom, Eve, and the Batman outscucks the Spad's pilot. Doug Garth, but how? The fire in his office. And Batman says, was started before he strafed and bombed the aerodome himself. And Batman says, he had to hit the ground outside his office back window, Eve, and I saw footprints partially washed away by the earlier rainstorm. That meant someone sneaked out that way during the storm, well before the strafling. So, always the world's greatest detective. And he says, so Garth killed Terrell, attacked the field, and then went for Mr. Hallstrom, but why? And how could he hope to explain his turning up alive later? And Batman says, by faking an injury. Let's say he got it leaping out the window during the field attack and had wandered off, dazed. Since all suspicion was already on your brother, who would do it? And he says, as for the why, Terrell and I learned that Doug was using aerodome profits to cover his gambling debts. Then he made the mistake of allowing him time to make it up. So he bombed his own office to destroy the incriminating records. But if Garth did all that, Then what happened to Benji, and where is he, Batman? Asks Eve. And that answer lies in the barn at Doug Garth's farm adjoining the Aerodome. And so, Benji, how did you guess, Batman? So here we go with the explanation. I I truly dig these 70s issues. It's hard to believe 74. That's the year I was born. This issue is 50 years old. So, um, or 51. My bad. Well, not quite 51. And so Batman says Garth had to have the Spad nearby, and his barn was his only hiding place. He'd want to hold your brother too, so that with his partner's finish, he could wreck the Spad, leaving the police a dead killer to find the cockpit. Benji. And so Benji says, I was a fool, Eve, thinking I could avenge Dad by channeling Joe Skies into real dogfights. Garth pretended to be willing when I approached him until he grabbed me and the Spad. And Batman says, accidentally did you the big favor of your life, Benji, keeping you from becoming a killer instead of him. Think about it. Think how big favor that was. The end. So it's a 12-page story. So yeah, it's very cool. Hope you enjoyed it. Alex Toth doesn't have a lot of stuff after the 40s and 50s and even the 60s. That's where a lot of his stuff is. A lot of romance, a lot of cowboys, a lot of stuff. But he doesn't have a lot of superhero work. So hope you enjoyed this. Detective Comics 442 by Archie Goodwin and Alex Toth. Incredible illustrator. Like and subscribe, and I do thank you for listening. Goodbye.